Welcome to the Peaceful Parenting Podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Rosensweet, mom of 3 young people, peaceful parenting coach, and your cheerleader and guide on all things parenting. Each week, we'll cover the tools, strategies, and support you need to end the yelling and power struggles and encourage your kids to listen and cooperate so that you can enjoy your family time. I'm happy to say we have a great relationship with our 3 kids. The teen years have been easy and joyful, not because we're special unicorns, but because my kids were raised with peaceful parenting. I've also helped so many parents just like you stop struggling and enjoy their kids again. I'm excited to be here with you today and bring you the insight and information you need to make your parenting journey a little more peaceful. Let's dive into this week's conversation. Hey all, before we get started, just a couple of quick things. I wanted to share a review from someone who is a podcast listener and also who has done my How to Stop Yelling at Your Kids free e-course. Nicola writes, Sarah's podcast has been a game changer for me in my parenting. I find the episodes so engaging and interesting, and I never get bored, which keeps me always coming back for more. I also did Sarah's 21-day course, that's the Stop Yelling course, and I'm thrilled to report that my relationship with my 3 children feels more connected and our home is more happy and playful. My kids are more settled and regulated with their behavior and emotions, and the sibling fights are fewer and far between. I give credit to this podcast and the course for helping me achieve this transformation for myself and my children. That makes me so happy to read, Nicola. Thank you so much for writing in. If you would like to do the How to Stop Yelling at Your Kids course, you can go to sarahrosensweet.com/yelling and sign up for free. And also, if you are like Nicola and you have found the podcast to be really life-changing, please help us and support the show and help us keep it ad-free. You can go to patreon.com/peacefulparenting. That's patreon.com/peacefulparenting and support the show. All right, let's dive back into the episode. Today, we are going to be talking about morning routines and how to make your mornings with kids easier. We got a great listener question about this, which we are going to play in a minute. But first, I wanted to introduce you to Stoney Baker, who is our guest today. And I thought it would be fun to have her on because she has little kids pretty much the same age as the listener who called in this question. And also, I just wanted you to get to know Stoney a little bit. She's one of my peaceful parenting coaches. So Stoney, can you just introduce yourself real quick?
Yeah, of course. So hi, thanks everybody for listening. And I'm Stoney. I'm working with Sarah as a peaceful parenting coach. I got to do some training with her in Korea this summer, which was wonderful. And I've been doing lots of coaching through the fall. I have 2 little kids who are 4 and 2. And I feel like I'm often trying to balance between encouraging them to climb all over me, but not letting them walk all over me. That's the line I'm trying to find with my parenting.
I love that. You want them to climb on you, but not walk on you. That's great. And if anyone listening wants a cheat sheet of these morning routine tips that we have put together, you can go to sarahrosensweet.com/mornings. That's sarahrosensweet.com/mornings. And you will be able to download a cheat sheet that has all of these tips that Stoney and I have come up with. So you don't have to worry about frantically writing them down if you're driving or folding the laundry or whatever it is that you're doing right now. So let's have a quick listen to Audrey's question.
Hi, Sarah. Thanks so much for replying to my email and letting me ask you a question. Your podcast has helped me a lot. You are like the best person for when you have more than one child. There have been like some other podcasts I listened to and I just like had a hard time implementing their advice because like I have 2 kids and it just wouldn't work, but you have such a great advice. So I just wanted to say thank you. My question is, and hopefully this is like okay as a listener question, if you feel like it's going too far into like coaching call territory, you can let me know. But my question is, how can I help my kids transition next year to going to a big kid school, like kindergarten? This year, they're still in preschool, and my son just turned 5. My daughter is 3, so she'll have another year of preschool. But mornings are really hard. Mornings are probably something that triggers me. It's just a lot of stress, making lunches, getting shoes on, just everything hectic with mornings. But I feel like I'm able to give them more peaceful parenting because our school right now is just a preschool. Like if we're late, it doesn't really matter. We can be there, anytime between like 8:50 and 9:15. And I mean, even if we're there past 9:15, we can still be let in. We just have to, let them come unlock the door for us. But, next year that's not going to work with big kids school, like real school. I have a lot of friends and they were telling me just that kindergarten is like a huge transition for kids and that there have been so many meltdowns with their kindergartner. It's so hard for them to be there earlier and stay later, and there's no rest period. So I just wanted to see if you had any like peaceful parenting tips for easier mornings getting to school with kids. And then I guess, I just wanted to mention, I know like it's October, so maybe this isn't like the best time of year to be asking because this is more going to be on people's minds like over the summer or, next August. But I just want to get ahead of the curve and make our mornings better.
Oh, Stoney, can you just feel her stress that she's like thinking about having to get to school on time next year?
And I'm so impressed by her ability to sort of put herself in that place and try to get set up as well as she can now in preparation.
It's impressive for sure.
Really impressive, and it's fantastic. But yeah, I can feel her stress. It's hard. Mornings are hard. I think other than bedtime, mornings are the periods parents talk to us most about,
Yeah, I just got off a coaching call with a dad who was frustrated with his 5-year-old in the mornings. We actually talked about a lot of this stuff. Okay, so let's dive in. What's your first tip for making mornings easier?
So the best thing I've been ever told about making mornings easier is that the morning starts the day before. It starts when they come home from school the day before or the night before. And what you really want to focus on is making sure you get the best dinner that you can possible into them and get them into bed as early as possible for a good night's sleep. So you're sort of doing some backwards counting. And what that means in our house is we start bedtime at 6:30, which is really early. But for my little ones, that's what's necessary so that they can get as much sleep as possible.
Yeah, that's great. And then also I would add to that, trying to get some connection time in the evening too if you can, even if you can't get special time, even if you're just connecting throughout your routine, those micro moments of connection that we're talking about.
Yeah, we would do an even earlier bedtime, I think, except that we want to leave at least half an hour for play in the evenings because we want some time. Like we both are working, we don't get our kids till 5, so we start dinner at 5:30. It's not always a fancy dinner, but it's always a full dinner. And then from 5:30 to 6, we're having dinner, and then 6 we start playing and have a little bit of time, half an hour. Try to build a connection so bedtime goes easier.
Yes, and bedtime does go easier when they feel connected because often they're resisting bedtime because they want to keep the connection with us going, and that's why you get the popping out of bed every 10 minutes. I need another hug and all of that.
Yeah. So that's for us, we would love to do an even earlier bedtime, but we have realized that bedtime stretches out longer and we get more frustrated. So we'd rather just stay downstairs, do the play, have some fun. And we don't always do it with special time. We often do it sort of all 4 of us together or 3 of us together while one parent does the cleanup from dinner. But that's the balance we found that makes it go as well as possible. But setting it up for the morning. So really like keeping in mind that, having a good evening or the night before makes the morning go smoother.
And I want to point out that when we say a good dinner, we don't necessarily mean like a fancy dinner, like you said, but like honestly, my kids had eggs for dinner a lot. Like, scrambled eggs, baby carrots, or jarred spaghetti sauce and spaghetti. Like it really doesn't have to, it can be quick and nutritious. Doesn't have to be anything you spend a long time making.
Yeah. We don't get our kids till 5 and we want dinner on the table at 5:30. So we have like half an hour to get in the door, like until we pick our kids up close by. So we probably get in at 5:10 and then 20 minutes to get dinner cooked. And so I have a few go-tos and that's what it is. It's nothing fancy. It's often, as you say, pasta with some canned tuna, but
Yeah,
pesto sauce and a vegetable or two. And that's what it is.
sounds good.
Yeah.
Okay, what's your next tip?
This is like chronological. So do what you can the night before to prepare for the next day. And so there's a couple things there. One is making lunches the night before, which I think sometimes as parents, we don't want to, after our kids go to bed, we don't want to be thinking about the next day. We sort of want to have some time to ourselves, which is really important too. But if you can make lunches the night before, you're going to have more ability to go through the morning routine side by side with your young kids, which is pretty necessary for most kids. And also either you can pick out the clothes for your kids the day and even just have them downstairs so that they're just like ready to go. Or you can get your kids into their clothes and have them sleep in their clothes. We haven't done that yet, but it's something I keep in my back pocket in case mornings become more of a struggle or feel rushed. And I think it's a really good option for lots of
I've
folks.
heard a lot of parents who do that, especially because a lot of kids' clothes are like pretty much the same material as pajamas, like leggings or sweatpants and t-shirts. And unless you wear a uniform or something like that, it's pretty much the same as pajamas.
My son refuses to wear jeans. Like we just didn't have them when he was little. And so he doesn't. Every time my husband tries to we have like a pair of khakis or whatever, my husband will try to put them on him and he'll refuse. And I'm like, why would you? Don't even bother. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. I
Like
call those hard pants, like my hard pants. Like I feel fancy if I'm wearing hard pants, like instead of leggings.
Yeah. Sure.
Okay. So yeah, also to that, what you can do the night before, I would add if you can get bags packed, like, get the water bottles filled up, put the permission slips in, like anything you can do to get that stuff packed. A lot of parents, I mean, it depends on how old your kids are, but I find a lot of parents get into power struggles over trying to get their kids to pack their own bags. And that turns into one of the morning stress things. And, there's so much time for little kids to learn to be responsible for their own things. And if that's easy for you, great. And your kids are good about packing their stuff. But if it just turns into one more thing that makes the morning stressful, trying to get them to get their own water and fill it up and get them to get their own stuff, I would say in the service of just making mornings smoother, don't worry about doing things for your kids that they could do themselves. Like make your life easier. Like there's lots of time for them to learn that responsibility and taking care of their own stuff. So just get those bags packed if you can, do what you can. And then also one thing that I found helpful was the night before, maybe when you're going, you're giving a snuggle at night, is kind of go over the expectations for the day. So when we wake up in the morning, this is what's going to happen. We're going to get up and we're going to blah, 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 and just kind of set those expectations and have a routine. And kids really do like to know what's going to happen and like those routines.
We have hooks, to your point about the bags, we have hooks by the front door, one for each kid. And so right when we come in from school, I'm hanging their bags up right where they're going to be. And then I can fill them up easily. I leave the bags hanging there and put things in or take things out, like take out the lunches, put in the new lunch. And that way they know exactly where it is. And my hope is that as they get older, they will take over more responsibility of those things. But my expectation at the moment is not that I will hold them to that because school is still so fresh. They're still adjusting to the patterns. And even though I do that for them at home, I know they're capable of doing it for themselves at school, and they will do it for themselves at school. And I don't let that frustrate me.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. And some days you might get that, do you want to get your water bottle and fill it up? And they are more capable and have more resources. And other days you just do it yourself. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Awesome. Okay. So what else have you found helps? I think we're moving on to the morning now.
So to your point about talking about the schedule, I think for little kids, like the caller's question, I think a picture schedule can be really helpful. And one suggestion that I've heard is that you have a picture schedule and you put Velcro on the back so you can move it from like needs to be done to complete. So I know that in the morning, our steps are sort of our kids wake up, we have some time snuggling with them together, either in their room or in our room. We go downstairs, we have breakfast. We move from breakfast into some play, and then from play we get dressed, and then we sort of brush our teeth. But we could set that up, whatever the steps are, on a picture schedule, and you could have them down. I would have it downstairs in my house and move it from needs to be done to done, and the kids can sort of push it across and see what steps have happened. But the big thing for us in keeping it simple in the morning is having everything happen downstairs. We don't want them having to come back upstairs and go downstairs and upstairs and downstairs. So we have an extra set of toothbrushes in the bathroom downstairs. So there's upstairs toothbrushes for bedtime and downstairs toothbrushes for the morning. And it seems a little silly, and I'm sure my parents think that it's a little crazy when they're in the guest bathroom and there's toothbrushes there, but it means that nobody's running up and down the stairs and we're all on the same floor for most of the morning.
I heard of a parent who had a basket of socks in the mudroom, like clean socks, just because in the morning no one would have socks on, and to save the trip back upstairs, they just have socks in the mudroom. And so they're getting their shoes and socks on like right there where everything is. I would also add for this that, you say, think of what needs to be done in the morning and have that, have your list. We actually called it the list. And I think it's helpful to have a conversation with your kids about, okay, what do we need to be getting done every morning? For us, it was the things that you just mentioned: get dressed, have breakfast,
and I actually, you know what? I don't even think they brush their teeth in the morning, but basically it was just like, get dressed and have breakfast. And, then you can you can check in with your kids, like, where are you on the list? Like, what do you still need to do? And then you're not looking at them going, you still need to get dressed, but you're saying, okay, where are you on the list? And they can refer to that visual schedule if they have it, or maybe it's small enough that they just have it in their heads, but just really putting that back on them, even when they're little. And so you're not nagging, you're inviting them to check in with themselves about where they are on the list. What do you still need to do?
For sure.
And keep it simple. Like, I've heard people, when I ask them, sometimes when I'm coaching and I ask someone, what's your morning routine? And they have like 25 things that they want the kids to do, feed the dog and make the bed. And I mean, I'm not saying kids, shouldn't be helping out in the family, but maybe if your mornings are stressful, that's not the time to be adding in the family helping activities.
Yeah, absolutely. For us, we mostly go through the stages sort of together, still as they're little. And I think probably as they get older, it'll be more broken apart, and we'll need them to take responsibility. But even like this caller, like, we're still all eating breakfast at about the same time. We're at the table together, and then we're moving on to one kid's getting dressed and then the next kid's getting dressed. And sort of that keeps the momentum as much as you can have it.
Mm-hmm.
I think also one of the struggles that families get into is that for families where you're waking up your kids, they want to leave their kids sleeping as long as possible, and they don't schedule in any time in the morning for play. And I think that can be really hard too.
Yeah.
I think kids will, as they have a different motivation than us. They want to get play as much as they can, and we can incorporate that play into getting dressed, and we can incorporate that play into getting our shoes on and getting out the door. But even just allowing for there to be time in the morning schedule so that they can actually sort of sit down and do some play themselves, I think would be really helpful.
Yeah, let's talk about play more in a minute, but I think that, to your point, to build in a buffer, like whether it's time for play or time for the unexpected, a meltdown of, not the shirt that you want to wear is in the washing machine and it's wet, or, whatever, but building in that extra buffer. I mean, worst thing is that you'll be ready early and you'll have extra time, but really, like, not counting off everything to the minute of how much time you have. And on the point also of, if you have to wake up your kids, it generally means that they're not going to bed early enough. If you have to wake kids up in the morning, it generally means that they're not getting enough sleep. So if someone who's listening is like, oh, yeah, I have to wake up my kids every morning, think about if you can get them to bed earlier, because really that is sleep experts say that's a sign that they're not getting enough sleep if they're not waking up on their own. So, and also for simplifying breakfast too, was something you and I had talked about. It doesn't have to be a cooked breakfast. My kids ate cereal a lot, toast.
We have a Instant Pot, and you can set it so that it is timed ahead, so it'll start in the morning. And we do oatmeal in the Instant Pot a lot during the winter. And
Nice.
That's a good one, where it's something that's cooked, but you don't have to do the parent isn't doing any work. Like, you're not getting up early. You can still have sort of as slow as you want a morning with your kids and get that done. My husband really likes cooking breakfast, but again, that's a bonus. That's not every day. That's only on the days when he can, and he just likes a warm breakfast, so he cooks it.
Oh, well, he can if he wants to.
He can if he wants to. That's right.
So you mentioned play and like building in time for play, and I think it's really important to remember that our agendas and our kids' agendas are going to be pretty much in opposition from each other in the morning. Like, our agenda is to get them up, dressed, out the door to school or daycare or whatever. Their agenda is stay home and play and stay with us. So, like, pretty much like polar opposite agendas. And so just recognizing that, I think, is really helpful. And, remembering our peaceful parenting mantra that they're not giving us a hard time, they're having a hard time, and that it's totally normal for a 5-year-old or 7-year-old or whatever to resist getting up and going to school. Even if they like school, transitions are hard. Even if they don't actually mind going to school, it's still hard to leave home when you're there with all your toys.
I had a real mind shift change around when my kids wanted to stay home with me, which was that I realized that it wasn't necessarily they didn't like school, it was that they liked home, right? That, when your kid is sort of giving you a hard time or wants to stay at home and is struggling to move through the morning routine, remembering that it's just that they love you and they want to be with you.
Yeah.
That is a really helpful reframe, so that you don't feel like something is wrong necessarily, that they aren't wanting to go to school. It's just they like being home with you.
Yeah. Well, and that's a great thing.
Yeah.
I also think that just recognizing that transitions are hard. I know I said that, but just want to say it again. It's just hard for little kids to go from one thing to another because they're fully in the moment. Little kids will, little or bigger kids are really like they're fully in playing. And even if they don't like school or they do like school, it's hard to go to something else. Like they just are so immersed in the moment. So transitions can just really be a stressful time. So using play, I think, let's talk more about play because I think play is so important on so many levels to be really thinking about that in our morning routine. It's important on the level of moving them through the schedule, like, having games around getting dressed and can your dad help you get dressed before I finish making the breakfast or something like that? Or let's put on a song and see if everybody can get dressed before the song is over or, pretending that your clothes are some sort of monkey suit. One of my kids loved monkeys, so anything to do with monkeys, and he would cooperate. Or pretending that let's put your pants on, and then pretending to put them on your head. But anything that you can do to be playful, I think, is really going to help just with that moving through the schedule. But also that play is connecting. So you're building up that connection, which makes kids want to be more cooperative, fills their cup in preparation for the separation from you when they are going to school or daycare. So I don't know, do you have any other thoughts on play and making time for play and being playful in that morning transition?
I think, as you said, having the buffer so that things don't have to happen at the most efficiently that they can. And that makes it so that you can sort of engage in that play. My kids think that socks and shoes talking and wanting to eat their feet is the funniest thing in the world. And that has gotten me. And of course, like I need to be in the right space for that. I need to have the capacity and the energy for that. But on the mornings when I do that, it goes much more smoothly and it goes faster and everybody's happier. And I feel like there's two kinds of play that happen in the morning. There's play with me. There's play with us. My partner often leaves before the kids and I go to school. And then there's also play between, like they have some time for focus play themselves that they can get into and they can do things with the magnet tiles or with whatever toys are out. And I feel like both of those things, even just a little bit of time for both those things helps fill their cup so that they feel better going out the door. And I feel better helping them go out the door because I know they're going into the world feeling more comfortable in their bodies, happier, in a more outgoing mood.
Mm-hmm. And you said, I love how you pointed out that it does take energy and it takes creativity to be playful. But if you're not, you're going to spend the energy anyways, just with nagging and corralling and getting frustrated. So might as well have the energy be for good and connection and having the morning go smoothly rather than having it go sideways.
No, for sure.
One thing with play though, we had to, when my kids were little, we were having a lot of trouble transitioning from play to getting ready. So at a certain point, we had to make a rule that you couldn't play until you were ready for school because it just got too stressful. Like, I just have to finish this. I just have to finish this one piece, or I just have to finish this one chapter. Like that was the other thing, like reading, like my kids were big readers. So we did have a family meeting at one point where I was like, listen, we're like so stressed and late every day. And we kind of had to come up with the idea of you couldn't play until you got ready, which feels a little like authoritarian to me on a certain level. Like I don't like having, I don't know, maybe just my personality. I don't like having rules like that, but it really did make things a lot easier. Just like, okay, just get everything done that you need to get done. And then you can play until it's time to go.
And it sounds like you got buy-in from them and that you had a family meeting and they understood the purpose of it. And, I think that's the way to do it. And that's predicated on things like having the conversation the night before about what the expectations will be the next day and having a visual calendar and put all the supports in place so that they are able to meet your expectations.
Yeah, for sure. And another thing I just thought of is that's really helpful is if you give kids something to work towards that you might get extra play if you can get ready quickly. So like, let's all get ready and we'll read a chapter of the book that we're reading, or let's all get ready and we'll have time for 10 minutes of roughhousing before we go. So I think that's another helpful thing to think about for that morning routine is giving them something to work towards. It's not just we're working towards going to school. We're working towards that extra fun time with mom or dad.
And if you have a kid who's really social, you can have that be play that happens at school. So like on the playground, you can say, if we get there early, you'll have some extra time to play on the playground with the other
Good
kids,
point.
or maybe you'll meet so-and-so who's often there beforehand. Like I think in the question that the caller submitted, she was talking about how it's a narrower window for drop off. But the reality is that you can get your kids, if they're the kind of kids who want to go early to play with their friends, that could be the incentive that you sort of say, let's get ready so we can get out the door and you can play soccer with your friends at the playground at school before the day starts.
Yeah, for sure. So before we move on from play and connection, just a couple more things I just thought of. One is if you have a kid who's anxious about school, it's going to be really helpful and important to get some laughter going before you go to school. So that could be part of your play, is just doing some laughter and roughhousing. Because what we know about laughter and anxiety is that laughter will help release some of the fears and stresses from our bodies. So it helps get rid of some of that cortisol and adrenaline for a kid who feels a little bit anxious about school. So really, it's almost like a prescription, like 10 minutes of laughter if you have an anxious kid, really to try and it's good for everyone. So you can do it with the whole family, but especially if you have a child who's a little bit anxious about school, that'll sort of help them go off for their day, whether it's separation anxiety or whether it's anxiety about being in the classroom, but really trying to get that laughter going. And also, we're sort of going a little bit backwards in the day, but I would say, we're always looking for those moments of connection throughout the routine to make things easier, but also because, some parents, this hour in the morning might be one of the only couple of hours they have with kids, right? So as much as we can make the morning easier, but also find ways to connect with delighting in our child. And one thing that I really treasure, that I still actually do this sometimes with my daughter, and she's 15, is like a 5-minute snuggle in bed before you even get up and start the day. But if you can afford it time-wise and you're not going to fall back asleep, have like a 5-minute or 2-minute even snuggle with each child and really just start off the day with that connection piece.
Yeah, that's so lovely. It's one of my favorite parts of the day for sure.
Yeah. Okay, so let's just get back to a couple more nuts and bolts that you had talked about.
So one of the things I think that's important for folks who are waking their kids up in the morning is, as tempting as it is on the weekend to let them sleep in, I think you've got to keep them waking up at a consistent time through the whole week so that Monday doesn't feel like startling or jarring. And so maybe if you're looking to get them extra sleep on the weekend, try to get them to bed earlier as opposed to getting them up later. And then the piece of advice that I think is maybe the hardest one for us to implement. We're always struggling with it, but I think it's a great piece of advice. And I know the days we do it, we really are glad for it, is to get up before your kids. So get up and get out of bed and get the pieces rolling that you need to get actually rolling that morning, and then go up for the snuggle when they're getting up. So I know my husband and I are always great about this, but this is the thing that we wish we did more. And when we do it, the day feels much easier, and it's much easier to be properly regulated yourself when you're not being jarred awake by your kids.
Yeah. And if you've had time to have if you're a caffeine person, if you've had your coffee or your tea and you're fully caffeinated by the time you have to start all of the things that we've been talking about. And also, like for me, just having like a few minutes to myself to, read a few pages of a book or read some of the New Yorker or whatever, but just having that little tiny bit of time to fill my own cup before I'm starting to get everybody else on their way. It's important.
To feel like a full person before you feel like a parent,
I always admire those people. Like I hear people talk about, they get up at 5 and they work out, or they just do all those things. Like, I don't think either of us are talking about that, but maybe just like, unless that's you. And if it's you, I really admire you. But even just getting up 15 minutes early, having your coffee or your tea, having a few minutes to yourself, I think that can make a huge difference. So this has been incredibly helpful, Stoney, and I think Audrey will really find this helpful, and everybody else who's listening. And it's been so great having you here, who's much closer to the morning routine than I am. I mean, my morning routine is basically I just get myself ready and everybody else gets themselves ready. And you will all get there sooner than you realize. Like as you and I are recording this, it was just Halloween this week. And for the first time in 22 years, I didn't have kids in costumes. And so it just goes by so fast. Like I was talking to a dad this morning who just said, like, I don't want to wish away my child's childhood. He's only 5, but I just dread the mornings with him. They're so hard. So I don't know if I could just have like kind of one foot in each place of like, I know I talk to all of you every day and you're here, Stoney, and I know how hard mornings can be. And also, like, annoying as it sounds, it goes by so fast. And someday you'll be like getting up and getting yourself ready and you won't have to worry about anybody else. And these days will seem like super far away. But before we close out, there's just two more things I want to say. And one, these are things that I think a lot of people miss in this morning routine struggles. And one is that a lot of kids, even if they are capable of getting themselves dressed or capable of getting their backpacks together, they still need more help than we realize a lot of times, or they still want more help. We've talked about this a lot in the podcast about how when kids want you to do things for them that they can do for themselves, it's often because they're looking for more nurturing. So if we can just go into these mornings with the expectation that, I might have to help them more than it seems reasonable to me, I think the mornings will go a lot more smoothly.
Absolutely. I think putting on a pair of shoes, as you say, it's something that they know how to do, most of them, by the time they're even 2, if they're in Montessori or if they're at a daycare or you've helped them learn. But helping them with those pieces will just feel like one day you'll miss it. And so I try to remember that when I'm having them jump into my lap while I put their shoes on. I try to hold on to that feeling too.
Yeah, and they experience it as nurturing, and also, to be quite frank, it makes things go faster. So don't worry about just doing it for them. And if you can go in with the expectation that I might have to help more than I'd like or more than I think is reasonable, it will just go so much more smoothly. And then finally, especially I think if we grew up in households where our parents got stressed about being late, or where there was a lot of chaos, in the morning or whatever, the thought of being late can be a real trigger for a lot of people. So I think if that's you, just recognizing that, oh yeah, this is a trigger for me, the worry about being late, and really just stop and remind yourself, if you find yourself getting triggered and impatient in the morning, this is taking longer, you're not getting out the door as quickly as you would like to. Sometimes it could be an emergency. You could be in danger of losing your job if you're late, or you're going to miss the bus and you don't have any other way to get the kids there. But I'd say most of the time, it's probably not a true emergency. Most of the time, and respect to teachers, we don't want to be late on the regular. However, most of the time, it's not an emergency. If your kid is late every once in a while, or you're, a little bit late getting them to drop off every once in a while, it's not an actual emergency. So just remind yourself, I can handle this. We'll probably be on time, but even if we're not, it's going to be okay.
And the calmer you can stay through the morning routine, the calmer your kids will be able to stay too.
Yeah. And that actually reminds me, kids experience rushing as stress. When we're rushing around, even if we're not stressed, we're just moving quickly. Often kids will experience that as stress, and that will make them get dysregulated. Kids get dysregulated, everything takes a lot longer. So if you can just kind of keep a handle on your own stress and your own rushing and try to, remind yourself that it's not an emergency, it will help everyone.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks, Stoney.
Thanks so much, Sarah, for having me.
And I'll just remind everyone that if you would like a cheat sheet that has all the tips that we've talked about today, go to sarahrosensweet.com/mornings. And if you would like to find out how you can get coaching from me or Stoney or Corey, you can also go to my website. There's a place there where you can apply for a free short consult to hear about how we can help you, and I'll support you as much as I can in 20 minutes. So again, it's all on my website, sarahrosensweet.com, along with tons of free resources and more helpful stuff for you all on your journey.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode. I hope you found this conversation insightful and exactly what you needed in this moment. Be sure to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. Remember that I'm rooting for you. I see you out there showing up for your kids and doing the best you can. Sending hugs over the airwaves today. Hang in there. You've got this.